This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 11:08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. Welcome, everyone. Okay, it is a beautiful, the kind of day we say is Chamber of Commerce weather out there. It is absolutely gorgeous. Well, let me rephrase that. I enjoyed the weather on the way up. Oh my gosh, was there traffic? A ton of it. Probably the most I've seen since March.
Snowbirds are coming down. Did you see it snowing already in the upper Midwest? Look out.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know? So, yeah. It doesn't surprise me. So it's snowbird weather, I guess, and I guess it's also, the police were out with multiple handguns and
the radar.
They were radaring all over. Yes,
okay.
It was definitely a radar kind of day. So, yeah, it's, what can I say? We are as they were measuring it. So,
well, you just had a commercial on for your plant sale.
Yeah, the plant sale. That's what I forgot. Something to drink. Oh well.
You don't have. Wait a minute. You don't.
I did not bring my coffee.
That's
today.
a first in 3 years.
Yeah, it has been. Isn't it amazing? That in and of itself is amazing, and yeah, the plant
Cliff
sale
can make you
is.
some.
We're good. November 8th, the Sunday after the election, and it's from 2 to 5 at the Community Center on Arosa Boulevard. And masks are required. It's a city building, so masks and distancing. And what we'll do is we will let people in. We have a 10-person limit in the room. But we want to make sure everybody has time to browse the plants and make their purchases. So, kind of excited about it. More than kind of. I'm very excited about it, actually.
It'd be nice just to get out.
It will be. And it's I like that the city is, doing what they can to maintain distancing. And I certainly saw that. I drove by my local early polling station, and people were, for the most part, outside the building, spaced through the park. It was a nice, orderly line, quite a distance through the parking lot. I knew it would be when I saw how many cars were parked there.
Wow. We went right down the street here to the main office, and I was joking with Stuart. It took 10 minutes from the time we opened the car door to the time we came back out to the parking lot. No lines. It was spectacular.
Where was that?
This is the main office of the elections right here on Okeechobee Road. Yeah. It was great. And it was no muss, no fuss. You're in, you're out, and and you vote and get your voted early sticker. Yeah, it's very cool.
Very, very cool. Okay. This is kind of an interesting thing that was just tossed at me, by the way. Speaking of plant sales, this is a bird of paradise.
Wait, where did that come? Well, obviously Cliff.
Yes, obviously Cliff, and he just brought it in. And notice, it's already trying to put down its little roots, and there you go.
Okay.
So
my.
Yeah. It's kind of a fun thing. We have this little mini seed swap on Friday nights. There's only a handful of people that come to services, but it's like each of us brings a little packet of seeds for somebody else to take, and that way
That's
different
cool.
seeds are being grown by different people.
Yeah, that's neat.
So yeah, I know we've got a whole bunch of sun-kissed melon seeds that are growing up. We've got Mexican bird of paradise. This is a regular bird of paradise. And, oh, yeah, sorry about that. Okay, don't touch it. I will leave it alone.
Cliff's
zooming
directing our TV stuff in here,
Yeah.
and of course you're showing your Facebook.
And
feed.
yeah, I've got Facebook. I've got Facebook going with two, both on the temple page and on my personal page. So, and in fact, I'm trying to figure out how to do that even better. But we'll get there. We'll figure this out. That works better. Okay. Oh, choose my live mode. Thank you. That's not what I want. Stop that. Yeah. So it's amazing how the slight difference in angle of camera will dramatically change the impression. But, speaking of debates, we learned that many back in the 60s, wasn't it? The famous debate that's credited.
Kennedy-Nixon?
Yeah, Kennedy-Nixon.
Oh, yeah. All the perspiration and Nixon's forehead. Yeah.
All those things that people see that you don't think about.
Now, I have a question about last night.
Okay.
And this is you look at the camera shot on Joe Biden, it was a little wider. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
And it was a real tight shot on the president. And I'm thinking, okay, his backdrop was darker, and it was, I don't know, I was questioning that, and it was that way through the whole show, and it was like the backdrop behind Joe Biden was all pale. He looked pale, and the president looked suntanned. I mean, I don't know. It was just, I just took it
it's
rather.
the kind of thing that we'll take a look at down the road and see what and if and
and
how.
oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because
and I know remote stuff is different, and it's difficult.
it's difficult to balance it.
Yes.
It's we had to pivot, and we normally Zoom our service, and there are big parts of it that I'm not thrilled with camera wise, because we have 2 mounted cameras in the sanctuary, and in reality one of those is used 99% of the time, and it's a fixed view.
Right.
It's a fixed view. We don't have the remote zooming in and out and the wide angle or any other of those controls. They're a little beyond our budget. And so it's a very static kind of picture, although what's going on is not static. And for the High Holy Days, for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, for those services, we did Zoom to Facebook. And that was very different because it was pre-recorded. It was pre-recorded and it was live. Right. So I was sitting at the Zoom.
Live on tape.
On tape.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
The tape was made live.
Right.
Number one. Number two, I was actually a window on the Zoom watching the video with people, and I would periodically pause it and interject or comment, and my sermons were all live, as were other things that happened during the service. There's a time when people are called up to say a blessing for Torah, and that was done live. So, so there was this interspersing of recording and live, and to me the interesting part of it was the difference in the different videos, was the themes of the different videos. So some videos showed flowers. There was a lot of Tucson scenery because a lot of what I used was my own photography. It's really easy to get the rights to your own photography.
Yes.
So the amazing amount of work that went into creating those hours of Zoomed service. I think somebody put it on the rabbi's Facebook section. I think there were 9 services that had to be created.
Wow.
Each of an hour to an hour and a half for the most part. The kids' services were shorter. But, there was a kids' service on Rosh Hashanah. There was a kids' service on Yom Kippur. There was an evening service. Let's see. So 2 evening services, 2 morning services, 2 Torah services, and then afternoon Yizkor Ne'ilah. It's more than 10.
Wow.
More than
Yeah.
10 services had to be created and processed, and each of those was made up of individual prayers. Each prayer was its own recording, and so as Cliff can appreciate, it was jamming all those things in on the timeline, balancing the volume, but it allowed us to do that. And when I do it fresh on the spot during a service, which I sometimes do, I'll bring in a video. It's a little more challenging to make sure the video's queued up right, at the right volume,
Sure.
etc. And so many of them come in so soft that if you don't boost the volume, it won't make it out. And I understand why they're doing that. They're doing that because of voice distortion. But, people have to be able to hear, and each of these devices wants to limit how much volume you have because
Sure.
of lawsuits.
Well, and it's interesting. Cliff has got some stuff from the St. Lucie County schools because of COVID. Mm-hmm. We are not taking the Christmas kids on the road, if you will. They'll be here in the studio on YouTube. And the school district has gone back over a couple of years' worth of shows and gotten the musical groups, and so we'll have the very best of employed during those shows.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it can all be done technologically now.
It's amazing. Cool. It's amazing what can be done. And there was an interesting poll actually on that rabbi spot, because they asked congregations. Somebody said, how much did you spend? And some of the congregations spent over $100,000 creating their services.
Oh, video-wise?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, video and tech crews to run it. The D.C., New York area synagogues, $100,000.
My budget for the Dodger features that I did was $18,000 for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was, and of course, obviously, that was camera crew, that was the editor, and,
yeah, and these services were hundreds of times.
Oh, yeah.
That.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
It's too, never. People have no idea what it takes to do that. And
yeah, when I saw some of those music shows, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how much edit time is involved in that? To sync all that up.
Oh yeah, the Brady Bunch.
Oh yeah,
videos.
Yeah. Oh man, that was great.
They are. They're impressive. And so I'm going to take us on a slightly different place, because I was, as interesting as the debate was, and it was certainly a different kind of tenor than the first one, and we didn't have the second
goodness.
one. Yeah, because that really was I was embarrassed.
Well, I think the whole country was.
And but one of the things that was kind of interesting to me about this debate was they had the station that I watched had a group of, I think it was 10 or 11 people who said they were undecided and were coming in to watch the debate to help make up their mind. And at the end of it, they talked to these 11 people, and I guess that was in North Carolina, was where it was located.
Okay.
And, 7 of the people said they had made up their mind in the course of the debate and knew who they were going to vote for. And there were still a few that hadn't yet decided. The debate was interesting, but it wasn't enough to make up their mind. And the announcer was he was like, I can't understand somebody not knowing, but what they're going to vote for. But, and that's, because a lot of people have in fact voted. Right.
NBC was using a figure. It's like 40 million or something like that.
Yeah,
have already voted.
It's a huge turnout.
That's great. Well, that's good though.
And
we need a good turnout. I mean, you hear about elections in Iraq and you get 90% turnout. And here we're lucky if we get 20. And you just think, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we really do have a silent group who's basically saying that it doesn't matter to them. Which, yeah, that's kind of mind-boggling to me. But I was raised to pay attention and care. I can remember as a kid running around, and of course you always support who your parents support when you're a kid, or mostly, not always.
Well, we had, teachers that, nuns that, I mean, they ran like student elections from the time it was like second or third grade. That was an annual thing.
Yeah.
In our school.
Yeah. Well, it's important.
Sure it is.
It's the most important civic duty that citizens have, and Sharon is telling me 50 million have voted.
That's great. Awesome.
And it is it's a very important thing. We have my husband and I have not yet gone. We are going to go to one of the early polling stations, and since you say that the board of elections, we may try that. It might be worth a little jaunt up, particularly if we drive up to the one we usually go to and the line is already out the door.
Oh, the community center was jammed.
This wasn't the community center that I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
It's a more remote site, but it's a remote site that has increasing population.
Oh, or if you're talking Rosser,
yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. You bet it's increasing, and actually that increasing population hasn't even scratched the surface yet.
No, I know. Yeah, if you look at all the building that's coming in that's not yet owned and sold, and
Del Webb's going to be 55,000 people just in that one
quadrant. Yeah, it's huge. That GL Homes and
Madamy and they're
all
building.
The different homes that are there. The apartments are starting to have people in them. That's going to be huge. That's going to take Port St. Lucie way over the top. We are a growing area. And so.
It's kind of like we're the next Wellington, and it kind of worked up from, western Miami area, where Miami-Dade College is, and it just keeps coming north, know.
And it will. But anyway, getting back to those 11, the one that interested me the most out of the group was this one younger person. I would guess he was 20s, maybe early 30s. And the announcer, asked him if he was decided, and he said no. And so the guy said, what's holding up your decision? And the answer was kind of interesting to me. And his answer was, well, if Barrett is confirmed, then he will vote for Biden. But if she's not, he'll vote for Trump. Because he believes in pro-life, which really isn't pro-life, but it's the position that's called that. And he thinks that she'll vote, that she'll take Roe v.
Wade.
Yeah. And
that's so far-fetched.
I understand.
Come on.
And so the guy pursued it, and he said, well, why would you vote for Biden?
Yeah,
if she's confirmed, why won't you stick with President Trump? And his comment was that he thinks that Biden's the better leader, the better candidate, but he is so invested in who gets nominated to the Supreme Court. And it was a kind of a mind-boggling
I would think it would
logic.
be just the opposite. If he's a Trump supporter, he'd want her on the court. I would think. I mean, that's weird.
Yeah, it's an interesting piece.
Well, the weird thing yesterday for us, there were no young people in that room with us.
Voting?
Yeah.
It may have been the time and the place.
It was 9 a.m., and yeah, you're right.
I'm sorry, 9 a.m. is very early for young people.
Yep.
Okay?
Oh, how well I know.
I have a 10 o'clock Zoom/Collaborate class, And
Yes.
the number of them that are, trying to get the sleep out of their eyes, and a few of them are still in pajamas in bed. They kind of like prop up the laptop and I do require cameras open for full attendance counting.
Are any of them our ball players? Don't answer that. Don't answer that.
I'm not answering any questions about who, what, where. But I will tell you that many of them are in the early stages of awakening for the morning. And I'm not all that terribly awake either, I confess. I'm sitting there with my cup of joe.
Yeah, but you've got other stuff like, working with the Chinese kids in the middle of the night.
Yeah. And you're right, but they've got things that they're doing. Usually it's surprising how many emails and texts I get. And I've given students permission to do that. It's specifically laid out. You can text until X o'clock. But tell me if you don't want me to text you back at that hour, because I'll text back whenever I see it. So.
Yeah. It's that is truly amazing. What I really wonder with a lot of the young kids now, like just using our young Floridian kids as an example, and you ask each one, well, when do you go to bed? And they'll say 1 or 2 in the morning, and then they're back up at 4 or 5, and it's like, holy smokes, how do they do it? Some of them are volunteering 400 or 500 hours, of volunteer time. I'm thinking, wow. And of course they come home and do their homework after that till maybe 1 or 2. It's like, wow.
Or what? Yeah. So they've got youth and resilience on their side.
That's true. That is true.
Right. And, when I was younger, I could go all week and then crash and burn one day and be back up and running. The crash and burns are longer and need more of them.
Yes. So true.
It feels like there's a daily crash and burn.
For me, it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I get it.
Well, with the videos that we were talking about, there were several all-nighters that went into that couple weeks leading up to the holidays, and
oh, I'm not surprised at all.
Unfortunately, I'm not either, and there's never something like that goes exactly as you plan it.
Sure. And
of course, the holiday being fixed, there's kind of like this really hard deadline, and so what gives is me. I'm squeezed between the things that I couldn't do earlier because I was waiting on music from a musician, or I was waiting on a video to come up, or any number of things that weren't out of my control that I had to piece together. And somewhere in there I had to do the things that I recorded, many of which were in my own backyard, some of which were in my living room, and I haven't posted it, but our green screen, I've talked a little bit about it. My green screen was a piece of green fabric hung over a PVC, not a PVC, an EMT conduit pipe, a 3/4 inch conduit, held by clamps on a ladder in a cat tree. Yeah, been there, done that. Yeah.
Cliff's done that before.
Anything that'll create the green screen, because I've got the fancy Zoom and all that, but I go to click it on my computer and it says, "Your computer is not configured for that technology. Please install green screen." I'm like, okay, we got that. So I had to do that. And of course now since we did some video equipment purchases on Amazon is sending me all of the portable green screen stuff and the this and that and what have you. But it's been interesting. And with that, I think we've got a call. Is that correct?
We do.
We do. So thank you for calling in. And Norman from Fort Pierce on line 1. Thank you, Norman.
Okay. I'd like to ask you a question. I'm from Brooklyn originally, and
I like that place. That's where I was born.
Okay. I had a lot of Jewish friends, and they strictly would call both them Democratic. Is there a reason for that?
The question was that he has a lot of Jewish friends, and at one time the Jewish vote was predominantly Democratic, and that I think that that was true. It's not nearly as true anymore. There are a good number of Jewish Republicans now, and so it's split all over. And part of that, I think, we often see that more immigrants tend to vote Democratic. That's one of the reasons for making it difficult in some areas, that people are making it difficult for immigrants to vote and trying to question whether or not they're legal. But very often immigrant populations will tend to be more liberal, more in line with the Democratic planks and positions. You see that with the Irish Catholics. You see that, and now we've got it with the groups that are more recent immigrants. So that, yeah.
The reason I was calling, because you were talking about that fellow that would vote for Trump if the Supreme Court justice was not nominated, and you know what? You're very much. I listen to you quite a bit, and I'm a Catholic. But they do you remember, you're in the history a lot, the night of the glass?
Yeah, Kristallnacht.
What's going on now with all this Antifa and BLM? They're destroying everything like what happened in 1936.
No, sir. You're saying that Antifa and the protests are like Kristallnacht? No, there's a huge difference. Forgive me, Norman. My parents were survivors, and I'm what's called second generation, and my mother lived through Kristallnacht in Vienna.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a huge difference.
I had a lot of friends that lived through it. I'm 83 right now, and they still voted, just because there was a D back there.
And some people do vote just by party without paying any attention to the candidate. No argument. That's not just, that's not any one group. But the big difference, the huge difference between Kristallnacht and the protests that are going on, that's night and day. Kristallnacht was run by the Nazis, by a fascist, trying to destroy the Jewish lifestyle and the Jewish homes and loot and pillage a targeted group of people. And here, what's being labeled as Antifa, all right, which is anti-fascist by its name, number one. Number two, if it was that level of violence and destruction, and it was state-run, it would be covered very, very differently than what is being covered. The people that I know, and I know people both pro and con on the protests. I've got people on all sides of it, and you need both wings to fly. Okay?
Yeah.
But there's not rampant, ongoing, glass-breaking, pillaging violence. Yes, there are breakouts of violence here and there. There are clashes between certain police elements and certain protest elements. But for the most part, like the walk across the bridge from Stewart toward Port St. Lucie, there was no violence there. It was just people walking with signs.
Oh no, that's fine with me. Peaceful protests. They're, with this anti-Jewish and anti-Christian sentiment that's running around, that's what was concerning me.
Well, there's a challenge with broad brush stroking, right? You want to talk Proud Boys before the group changed by a group taking over, by the gay lesbian community getting hold of Proud Boys, which that's incredibly clever. But aside from that, when our president refers to domestic terrorism as a bunch of good folk, that scares me personally, right? Because that is.
If you listen to his speech, it wasn't talking about those certain people. It was talking about the protesters.
He was talking in Charlottesville about
Yeah.
the folks who were brandishing a gun standing outside the temple holding services.
Yeah, but it's basically the same old. If you look at their website, like Antifa, it's a Marxist group.
Antifa does not have, that's not an organized group, sir. I'm sorry, it's not.
International.
According to some news pundits, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you anyway.
You're welcome, Norman. Thank you.
What Norman brought up a question.
Yeah, and please repeat it because there are folks on Facebook didn't hear it.
Well, kind of comparing the
Yeah.
Antifa to what went on in Europe. What went on during World War II, could you compare with what ISIS did in the Mideast just a couple years ago, destroying a lot of the sites that were precious for centuries? Or no?
Again, both are horrible destruction scenarios. And yes, there is some element of ethnic cleansing, right? The issue in Germany
Ethnic cleansing.
is ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
Right. It's this idea that some group in our society is somehow less human than other humans in the society, and therefore we can bully them, we can subject them to ethnic cleansing. That's what Hitler was trying to do. He objected to Jews as they weren't entitled to the air they were breathing. He said the same thing about gay, lesbian. He had a whole group of who was in and who was out, and ironically, he didn't fit in the in group. And that has always fascinated me, how leaders, I wish there was a better word to use. They're not charismatic leaders. They don't meet the criteria for charisma anymore. We've modified charisma, thank you, to include an ethical element. Because the reality was that Hitler was not good for Germany. They were under rationing within months of him coming to power. They were in horrible condition, and Hitler himself wrote in his diaries that he was amazed at how mean Germans were to other Germans. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes down into that. And to compare the Black Lives Matter protesting, segmenting a section of our population for excessive violence and excessive incarceration is a totally different thing from ethnic cleansing. And to begin to equate them is almost horrific.
I remember, I think, the shock that I displayed. Our chief photographer at ESPN brought his parents in, and we'd been on a couple of weeks or so. And you look on their arms and the numbers that were stenciled in there, and at Auschwitz, and you just think, oh my God, that's
to tattoo a number on somebody. To even think
horrible,
about that.
Horrible.
And to imply that exercising free speech, and are there there have been just so many cases of far-right groups masquerading as this. Is there a militant left? Unfortunately, yes, there is. I don't like militant groups on either extreme. The barbells that push the right and the left give both a bloody, a black eye. It's the folks that tend toward the middle that want to keep the bird afloat.
Sure.
That really make the country healthy. We need, you can't have everybody agreeing and everybody supporting any one person, or you've got a problem. You probably have stifling of free speech. You certainly have a stifling of the growth. You need, ironically, it's a discussion that Stuart and I have had from time to time. You need challenges to status quo. You need somebody who forces you to think and come up with the reasons of why you're defending the position you're defending, or it's a blind defense. And just as I said to Norman, where there still are people who vote because it's a D on the ticket or an R on the ticket. And there are people who don't like either candidate. That's not a good reason to not vote, by the way, folks. You pick the better one. Not the less odious, but the better one, the one that you think is going to take our country where it, in fact, needs to go.
I'll never forget covering People's Park in Berkeley, or Berkeley as we call it. And Ronald Reagan was there attempting to speak and got shouted down by the audience. And he asked to see the leader of the group. And the two of them went off to the side. And as it turned out, a little bit later, the governor's office announced that the leader of that group would be coming to Sacramento to start meeting the following Monday with the governor.
Yeah.
Some of the grievances. And I thought, wow,
that's
this is the way it should work.
That's the way it should work.
It's the way it should work.
And I know that Stuart has talked about it, right? The way to do politics is when we created the Bill of Rights, I mean, first of all, we had a Constitution. And they immediately said, this isn't going to work, and came up with 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. Right? The document was amended before the ink was dry. And those amendments are still being reinvented, for lack of a better word. That's not the right word for it. They're being broadened and understood in the most Ruth Bader Ginsburg way. Right? How to be the best for the most people.
Right.
That was always her goal, of blessed memory. And that's really the issue. There needs to not be an elite group and, the wannabes. That's not the way that you run society. There's a line in one of the videos that we used for the High Holiday, which says, "Ain't no religion better than them all, as long as you can see the spark of God in every face that you behold."
Ooh, I like that.
Okay?
That is so cool.
And that's the real reason, right? If you think that any one group is better than anybody else, as we used to say, who died and made you God, right? That's for God to decide what we've done right or wrong. Now, if you do harm against a fellow human being, then yes, other human beings should come in and prevent you from doing more harm. But, when you read consistently things like you met the description, you were of a certain skin color wearing a hat. That's not a description. It's the same thing if somebody's a 5'7" male. I'm sorry, there's a lot of 5'7" males in the world. And, wherever. So, and I'll share another little piece while we're waiting for that call. Is that a call?
I'm not sure. I may have lost it here.
Okay.
Margaret, we lost
Margaret, please call back in. We accidentally lost you. Please do call back in. And I hear a ring, so maybe she's coming back in. But as I'm listening to that, I'm going to share with somebody this vignette. We had a member whose family was involved in a car accident, and one of the family members was killed in the car accident. And the accident was caused by a young person, and I'm not sure if they were running a stoplight or a traffic light, a young male, age 19. And the family here wanted to make sure that person wasn't criminalized because they believe that it was an actual accident. There wasn't drug or alcohol. Hang on, Margaret, 1 second, I'll get to you. That wasn't drugs or alcohol involved. The kid wasn't texting. It just was a mistake. They didn't see whatever it was, just a moment of distraction. And there's a whole lot more to the story. I'm trying to simplify it. But I ended up talking to a rabbi in North Carolina. And interestingly, his first question to me was the driver from a wealthy white home, or was he African American?
Ooh, ouch.
And I
Really?
said, yeah, that was his first question. And I answered candidly, I had no idea. It had not entered into the discussion with my member. I did not know. I knew it was a young male. I knew that he was 18, 19. Turns out he's 19. And the rabbi said to me, unfortunately, in North Carolina, it makes a huge difference. If he comes from a wealthy white group, the charges will disappear.
Yeah.
If he's African American, he'll probably do time. And if we've got that, if somebody...
I'm sure if that's North Florida, it would be the same way.
Anyway, so with that, from Fort Pierce, Margaret on line 3, thank you for calling.
Good morning. Thank you. I totally agree with you about the voting party this time. This election probably is so important. We shouldn't be looking at party. We should be looking at character. There are so many other issues that we need to be looking at, and a lot of us did get in the habit of voting, Democrat or Republican, whatever. I am a registered Republican. I'm just putting that out there so people won't turn off based on what I have to say. I overheard, on TV, because I've listened to Trump probably for 200 hours since March, and I'm retired. So I've been able to hear everything he says. I don't hear what some TV station or radio station or newspaper or whatever. I'm hearing it out of his mouth from start to finish, so it's not cut and paste. He remarked that about some Michigan people who were armed in the Capitol, and also with the recent threat to the governor's life. He says, yeah, those people have good DNA. Mm-hmm. And you can look it up. That's the technology that we have nowadays. That everything's permanent. Everything's on tape. Everything is recorded. Yeah. And to say that they have good DNA, my husband and I were just shocked.
Yeah.
Like I said, so don't turn me off, people out there listening. I'm registered Republican, so it's not like, there's a conspiracy here. And another thing that my husband came home from work one day, and it was shortly after President Trump had stood outside I believe it was the Episcopal Church near the White House.
Yeah.
And he was holding up the Bible, and he was having his military there, which is not his military, but anyway. And so we had seen all that on TV, and they had disrupted these Black Lives Matter and the other peaceful protesters. And actually, it's something that's glossed over is that the Washington City Police had knelt with those protesters in the street. And then when President Trump brought in the troops, which disrupted everything, it was disturbing. But my point I'm getting around to is that my husband came home from work a couple of days later, and he's not afraid of anything. He doesn't do a lot of, women think, and we analyze those. He came home, he says, oh, my gosh. He says, now I know what that reminded me of when Trump was outside the church, and he was looking at his troops in the street marching. Mm-hmm. And I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? And he says, Germany, 100 years ago. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, we just shuddered. I mean, we had chill bumps. It's like, so what I'm not understanding is people picking and choosing, like the gentleman who just called. Does he not also think about Hitler looking over his military troops as they marched down the street? And when he was asking the question about what was going on in Germany with the camps, and I'm not familiar with the camp that you were talking about, but I'm thinking, well, what are some other things that you could look back and make a comparison of?
Okay, so Margaret, if I may, I'm going to paraphrase you because the folks that are on Facebook Live with us don't hear your question. So Margaret tells us that she is a registered registered Republican. Let me get that correct. And correct me if I make any errors in repeating what you said. And that she has been listening to President Trump talk since March, basically since the shutdown, and actually listening to and watching his everything that he has to say, because she's a registered Republican. And she was commenting about the photo op in D.C. and how the Washington police had participated and supported the protesters, but the paramilitary that President Trump used to disband them and put chemicals in their midst, let's leave it that way, and disperse them. Also, actually, you didn't say this, but I'm going to toss it in, Margaret. There were medics that were sitting there that were there for the folks that were out for the protest, and there was clergy in the courtyard of that church that also got dispersed in that event. And Margaret was saying that her husband saw that picture of him holding up the Bible and being reminiscent of a certain Hitler photo. And so there's pieces of that kind of thing where I think, and this is purely my opinion, I think he's trying to telegraph an image to what he believes is his base, what he thinks are the group that will keep him in office. And so I think that's what that's about. And I think you're right, that was a very reminiscent photo. We have a president who has, and you commented it on record, right, that he said about the armed militants and the violence that has gone on that's been white supremacist, that they have good DNA, that's a very scary comment, right? Because that speaks to that ethnic cleansing kind of, and I'm forgetting the term, Skinner supported it, eugenics. Right, that's a eugenics kind of comment, and that's scary in and of itself. But we also have a president who says Kim Jong is a neat guy, right?
Oh yeah, he loves him. The love letters, and I know recently we've seen parades in Kim Jong Un in North Korea, the military, and he's standing there chest out, Kim Jong Un, and is watching his military parade, and that's what Trump was looking at, and the outside the church, but. Another thing,
I'm going to give you another image like that. Even his little ride out of the hospital in that limo.
Oh.
Right, was kind of that was a visual image to tell his base that he's still strong and viable and he's not sick.
I say to people out there, you're smarter than this, America. You're smarter than this. If you don't understand the word mercenary, these protesters who did all the destruction are mercenaries. They are paid to be there. They come by trucks. They have all their supplies. They have all their bricks, their guns, their whatever. They are paid mercenaries, and they're primarily white supremacists.
Yeah.
I have no agenda. I'm just stating fact. The white supremacist is strong for decades now, getting stronger. And if we empower them, it just is going to be worth. They're a scary bunch of people.
Yeah, they are a scary group of people.
Anti-fascists, they just want to do away with the government. Do away with the government, and like you said, they're not organized. It's not. But the white supremacists, very, very, they're mercenaries. They're getting paid to go and burn, and so forth. And that's a very scary thing because someone with big money is behind that. Well, and I just think that we're smarter than this to pick and choose. We ought to be concerned about everything.
I'd like to hope that we are smart enough. We'll
I'm a little skeptical sometimes.
Well, I have to go on record. The reason I'm a registered Republican, it happened back in 2000, is because I love John McCain, and I wanted to vote for John McCain. And in our state, you can't vote in the primary, out of your party. So I changed to Republican. But it's nice because I call the Republican literature. And I can say what I want to say about the Republicans.
There you go. Well, thank you for that, Margaret. Margaret said that she's a Republican
I
very
much enjoy the show.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you. Because she wanted to vote for John McCain, and as a person who comes from Arizona, I have to tell you, I have a lot of respect for John McCain, also of blessed memory. Right? This is a man who took the birthers to task when they besmirched President Obama. And he said to them, stop that. He's got a birth certificate. He's born in the U.S. Cut it out. This is nonsense. And, he said that as a Republican of a Democrat, we certainly don't see much of that kind of behavior right now. We see quite the opposite. And probably I've only got a few minutes left, and we can pick this up again next week.
Yeah, and she said she's a Republican.
She's a Republican.
Trump's not a Republican. He voted Democratic his entire life, So it's crazy.
Well, and in the many comments, but anyway, yeah.
I think character counts. Maybe we'll come up with that terminology somewhere.
Somewhere, hopefully. I think a lot is at stake, and I hope that the American public does care about what our image is in the rest of the world, does care about everybody in our country. I know I've gone on record and said people need to be able to have food, they need to be able to have shelter, they need to be able to have access to medical and educational opportunities, regardless of who, what, where, when. That just needs to be universal. And, and no, we can't wait for the government to do it, because we're still working on, which men are created equal. And until we get it that all human beings are, we need to help our government get there. And people ask, why are many Jews democratic? There's a very simple answer to that. In Torah, it says, you were once oppressed in Egypt. You know what it's like to be on the low end of the stick. Don't do it to anyone else. That doesn't mean Jews are perfect by a long shot. The fact that it's in Scripture tells you that people don't get it. We need to keep pounding that. But that's God's words. Don't do it to others. Don't put yourself above someone else. And that quote from Leviticus that Jesus quoted, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. It is in the center of Torah, in the very, very middle of a tractate called Kedoshim, called Holiness. It is what being holy is to love yourself and to love everyone else, and to work that balance out in a way that's the best for the most people that it can be. And if that makes one a Democrat or a Republican or a Green Party, I don't care where you are. Please learn the facts, listen to things. Don't listen to people telling you about them. Learn the truth. This is Rabbi Shafir Lobb, and this has been Ask a Rabbi. Thank you so much for calling in. Thank you for listening.
And don't forget, what? Plant sale?
November 8th. Plant sale.
Yep.
November 8th, the Sunday after the election. We may or may not know who's president, but we can certainly come out and buy a great plant.
No, we won't know
At
for
the community
3 or
center.
4 weeks
I agree.
Michigan
be a
and
while.
Wisconsin. There you go.
And Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania. Oh, brother. You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie, talking the Treasure Coast, webcaster of the world.